What happens when China reaches a point where it no longer depends on American technology? That single question is quietly shaking boardrooms, intelligence offices, and entire industries around the world. Because something enormous has already happened, and most people still don't realize the shift that has taken place. China has finally broken the dependency that allowed the United States to hold technological leverage for more than 3 decades. A leverage built on microchips, patents, export control, and the long-standing belief that China would never achieve technological independence. But that belief is beginning to collapse. Here's the part almost no one talks about. The moment Washington tried to freeze China out of advanced chips, something unexpected happened. China responded with a level of coordination, nationwide, that surprised even its own experts. Instead of falling behind, China built alternative supply chains, turned entire provinces into research hubs, and pushed local companies to engineer replacements for every critical American component. For years, this transformation was kept out of the headlines, but now, its results are impossible to hide. In this video, you'll learn how China turned sanctions into fuel, why some breakthroughs were kept intentionally quiet, and how these developments may reshape the global technology balance for decades. You'll see the decisions China made years ago, decisions that are only now revealing their full impact, and why the United States is quietly facing a strategic challenge it never expected. You will also hear about lesser-known moves inside China's tech world. Internal technology reserves, shadow supply networks, and domestic projects that were dismissed as failures until they weren't. Stay until the end, because the final section reveals the true turning point. The moment China stopped reacting to pressure and began building a technologically self-sustaining system that cannot be cut off. A shift that could weaken American power in trade, military planning, and global tech standards. A shift that may influence how smaller countries choose their technological partners. Experts now warn that the world is entering a new era, an era where technology is no longer dominated by a single superpower. And this turning point affects your job, your future, and the global economy. This story isn't just about chips or smartphones. It's about who controls the next era of computing, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and digital infrastructure. It's about a rivalry that is no longer one-sided. And it's about what happens when the world's fastest rising tech ecosystem no longer needs permission or access from the old leader. If you're ready to understand the real shift happening behind the headlines, stay with us. You're about to learn how China changed the game while the world wasn't watching, and why this moment could mark the beginning of a completely new technological order. Welcome to the channel, and remember to subscribe for more deep analysis. For decades, the United States controlled the highest ground in the digital world. The most advanced chip designs, the key software platforms, and the specialized machines that powered global electronics production. Silicon Valley set global standards. American chip giants defined the semiconductor industry. And Washington used this dominance as a tool of influence, sometimes as a weapon. Sanctions, export bans, strategic alliances, these became part of America's global playbook. When the U.S. restricted access to a certain chip or machine, entire industries overseas could slow down overnight. Even allies had to follow America's lead because their systems depended on U.S. patents, software, and chip expertise. For years, China was no exception. Its early tech sector leaned heavily on American chip designs, American cloud systems, American operating software, and American semiconductor equipment. This dependence created a vulnerability Beijing understood all too well. So when Washington tightened control, it aimed straight at China's technological foundation. The U.S. cut China off from advanced chips made by NVIDIA and TSMC, chips essential for AI, supercomputing, and next-generation networks. The message was simple: slow China down. Then came restrictions on ASML machines, the world's only advanced lithography tools. Without them, China's ability to produce cutting-edge chips appeared frozen. American officials believed this would lock China years behind. But something happened that Washington didn't expect. Instead of stalling, China shifted into national emergency mode. Universities expanded semiconductor programs overnight. Local governments funded new research zones. Engineers returned from abroad with fresh expertise. Factories reorganized entire supply chains to eliminate foreign reliance. Companies started building replacements for every restricted American component, even if it meant going back to the basics. China launched one of the largest technological mobilizations in modern history. Billions flowed into chip development. New research labs appeared across major cities. Domestic processors replaced foreign hardware. Government agencies switched to local systems. Cloud providers built their own platforms. Step by step, China created a functioning parallel tech ecosystem. Huawei became the most symbolic example. Experts predicted its collapse. Instead, it introduced new processors, designed without access to U.S. technology, proving that China's engineers could innovate under pressure. Domestic chipmakers hit milestones earlier than expected, producing advanced nodes many believed were out of reach. AI labs replaced NVIDIA chips with local accelerators. Data centers upgraded to domestic servers. Startups launched their own AI hardware. Slowly, China reduced the exact dependency the U.S. had relied on for leverage. Across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, nations quietly began moving toward Chinese technology. 5G networks, data centers, cloud services, security systems, consumer devices, all increasingly built on Chinese hardware, not American. Why? Because Chinese tech was more affordable, easier to deploy, free from U.S. political conditions. And this created a new fear in Washington. American technological leverage was fading. Export controls became harder to enforce. Countries found loopholes. Suppliers redirected shipments. Chinese companies continued expanding. And year after year, American pressure produced diminishing results. Meanwhile, Chinese standards began spreading globally. Telecom firms embraced Chinese 5G. Infrastructure projects relied on Chinese data systems. Electronics brands adopted Chinese chips. The world slowly drifted toward a dual tech order, one built on American systems, one built on Chinese systems, a split that will shape cybersecurity, supply chains, and global communication for years. China has not surpassed the U.S. in every area, but one thing is undeniable. China is no longer vulnerable the way it once was. It now has its own chip makers, its own cloud giants, its own AI industry, its own hardware chains. Even where China still trails, it competes rather than depends. This changes how countries calculate technological risk. A nation that can rely on itself cannot be pressured like one that depends on foreign suppliers. Global tech power is no longer one-sided. Alternative systems now exist. New alliances are forming, and the next decade will decide who leads the digital world. China's journey from dependency to resilience has permanently shifted the global technology landscape. The country once constrained by foreign chips and patents has now built its own road forward, and the world is watching two giants move on parallel tracks, each building the systems, standards, and infrastructure that will define the digital future. The next chapter will determine whose networks connect the world, whose chips power tomorrow's industries, whose vision shapes the digital age. If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring deeper insights into the global shifts reshaping our world.